To his horror, he realized that the hotel was shrinking with each passing night. To test his suspicions, he hung a rope between the two walls, and as the night passed, the rope collapsed. The length of the rope did not change, which meant that the two walls were getting closer together. He immediately told all the chefs about this terrible news, and even more terrible is that this hotel has no exit chefs, and tenants have lived here for as many as 10 years and never left half a step. If it continues to shrink, sooner or later, they will be crushed and buried here. But strangely enough, no one seemed to care about this life-threatening event except for him, and the chefs worked together to throw him out of the kitchen. Paul was a traveling magician who had a magic show tomorrow at a cafe in this town and had found a hotel nearby where he could stay with a one-eyed old woman at the front desk. Paul got a single room and went to bed early that night to build up his energy for tomorrow's show. But the next morning, when he was about to leave the hotel with his 2 suitcases, he realized that he couldn't find his way out of the hotel. But the stairway that he had used to go up the stairs yesterday had been turned into a wall, and it didn't look like it had been newly built last night. He was puzzled when the old pipe suddenly began to shake and make a metal clashing sound, followed by the wall also began to vibrate. Paul put his ear close to listen carefully, only to hear a strong thumping sound like a heartbeat. The lights in the corridor began to flicker. Small doors opened at the base of the walls, and without warning, an orchestra emerged from them, playing music and approaching Paul's direction. All the strange things that were happening baffled Paul for a moment, so he turned away with his bags to make room for the band in order not to cause trouble. But just around the corner, he bumped into a waiter who handed him a plate of food. In this way, Paul somehow became a member of the hotel's kitchen and followed the leader of the team, the fat girl, to the kitchen. In addition to those busy chefs in the kitchen, the most noticeable thing is the ingredients. Seemingly every dish is made with eggs, duck eggs, goose eggs, quail eggs, and so on, all kinds of eggs. They are from a conveyor to the back of the kitchen, a steady stream of eggs. As Paul stood in the back of the kitchen wondering what to do, he was forced by the fat girl to put on an apron and get to work. Reluctantly, Paul was met with jealousy from the others. Paul hurried to explain that he was just passing by, but the opposite curly hair, as if he saw something terrible, suddenly lowered his head and concentrated on his work. No longer say anything. Paul turned his head to see that the head chef was standing aside with a serious expression staring at them. But Paul not only did not care about it, but also played a magic trick in front of the head chef. The head chef just looked at it for a few moments and then left. The chefs lived in a dormitory. Although the living environment was not satisfactory, but always at the end of the day in the joy of singing and dancing with the only musical instruments. Paul, who was also enjoying himself, was interrupted by a noise from the house. But when he turned his head to look at the rest of his co-workers, no one seemed to notice but him. Outside the door, Paul listened carefully to find the source of the sound, which sounded like 2 walls crushing in the center, causing the wooden boards to crack. Paul had a bold guess, stretching his arm to measure the width of the corridor, and found that it was impossible to touch both walls at the same time. Shook his head and laughed bitterly, thinking that he was overthinking it. Turned his head to the bathroom to facilitate. The door behind him was turned from the outside. Of the good thing that Paul had the habit of unlocking the door when he went to the bathroom so that the outside did not break in.